So first of all, we're going to wait just a couple of seconds just to make sure everybody gets in. But just to give you some context, today we're going to be in a very special podcast with Alex, founder of Aimfox, Brian, founder of Puzzle, Zach, founder of Octave. So just to give you a quick background, I'm going to use my standard introduction. So I want people to meet Zach. Zach is currently running a company that's pioneering what he calls generative GTM. Brian is currently spearheading a company that talks about the visual is a visual platform that helps teams map and optimize and scale their business processes. And then Alex, he is currently running a fast growing LinkedIn outreach platform built for GTM and agencies. So just to get started, I do want to hear a quick introduction from each of you members. Very, very happy to be here. Very grateful. I actually had the chance to meet every single one of you guys before we managed to get a roundtable going. So very excited for my end to be here. And I'm sure a lot of people in the community are also excited to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
Awesome. So who goes first with the intro?
I think you start.
All right, man. I'll go for it. So Dave, thank you for having me. My name is Alex. Yeah, I'm the founder of Aimfox. This is my third product so far in my SaaS career, and I think I have a lot of background. Well, a lot. I mean, I have a fair amount of background in outbound in general, just like from emailing to LinkedIn outreach, obviously, to different forms. So yeah, I mean, the whole GTM motion that has been picking up lately is super cool for me, and I'm glad I'm part of the movement.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Alex, just to give you a quick take here, I'm using your tool. Very happy with the results that I'm generating. That's something that we're going to talk later on,
Awesome.
But definitely has made a big shift to our GTM plan. So I really want to thank you for that as well.
Hey, thank you for using us, bro.
Awesome. Brian.
Dave. Sure thing. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Ragone. I'm the CEO and founder of Puzzle. Puzzle helps you visualize your GTM processes so that you can make decisions on where technology can increase margin on what you're doing, right? So organizations today are using tons and tons of software to orchestrate their GTM. And so making sense of how all of that software works and making investments into the right platforms to where you can build hyper scalable processes for GTM is the purpose of visualizing your processes, getting them on paper, and getting your whole team to be aligned.
Awesome, Brian. Well, Brian, first thing I want to say is the day I met you, I realized how disorganized I was for certain things. So when you showed me the platform, it actually gave me so much clarity. I was actually very confident to use it on a program that we're currently running. And I got so much buy-in from the rest of the team that I just have to share to the world what I'm doing, building in public, which is something I'm learning from the three of you guys. And that has been great, to be honest. It gave us a lot of clarity and a lot of confidence, as I mentioned. So I really appreciate you for that.
Thanks, Dave.
Awesome. Zach.
Thanks for having me. Good to see y'all again. So co-founder and CEO of Octave. So broadly speaking, we're helping companies with their messaging and positioning. So think of all the work you do to figure out what are the problems you solve, who are the personas you're going after, what are their pain points, what's the social proof, how do you position for selling to fintechs versus e-commerce companies, right? If you have lots of different market segments. So we're helping you take all the stuff that's traditionally been in Dex and Docs and in your head and bring you tooling so you can build that into agentic systems to be much faster, more efficient, and ultimately more potent in your efforts to go engage your market, engage your buyers. My background's in go-to-market. I've been doing outbound for a long time. I was started as an SDR 15 years ago. So, this is in my bones, I guess. So pumped to chat with y'all and share more.
Awesome. Brian, Zach, I remember the last time I had a conversation with you, I was showing you what I was capable to kind of achieve with ChatGPT and all this stuff. And then I realized you were 10 years ahead of me. And then that gave me a lot of tweaks and understanding of how to really get context out of everything, And at first I felt like a few years back, everything was about who had the best data. Now it's like who has the best data, who has the best systems, and who has the most context. So I want to appreciate that for that as well, because it has given me more clarity about CloudTask as well as a company. Because you're in a constant learning curve, right? And for me, it's like I needed to get so much clarity on the business, because sometimes even on like terms and conditions and all this data that sometimes we tend to forget, we want to keep it always up to date, and we want to make sure that it's all included in our messaging, so the buyer is 100% aligned with everything, right? So I appreciate for helping me get more context over our own business, and that has definitely improved a lot of the people that are coming in, because the message is more clear. So
Man, thank you. That's awesome.
totally appreciate that, man. All right, guys. So just want to get this very excited for the audience. There's 3 questions that we have that we want to get your individual takes. Obviously, these are questions that buyers from our community are always asking for, right? As you guys know, we are a marketplace primarily with talent. We do have a lot of software companies, other service companies as well. And most of them, they want to hire people based on their tools. They want to hire agencies based on their tool experience. So I just want to get your take. We are going to talk about talent, but we're also going to embed that into software. So the first questions that I want to go with, and we can follow the same order that we started, right? Is what are the must-have GTM tools today compared to what teams relied on a few years ago? We can start with Alex.
Yeah, man, let's go for it. Yeah, I mean, like, I think like today, like there are a lot of tools coming out, and I think it can be a little bit like overwhelming. But like, I'd like to classify the tools kind of in 2 categories. One will be like the data layer, or like the context layer, and then like the other would be like the outbound tools, right? So you need a set of tools that you're going to use to make sure that you have the right data, that you have the right messaging, that you have like the right context, all of that stuff. You prep all of that, and then you need another set of tools that is going to be your outreach machine, basically. That's going to be like doing outreach at the scale you need. So I think it's I think like the winning combination is a combination of 2 of those tools, 2 of those types of tools. Now, in terms of like actual tools, I see people using, obviously, in the outbound space. I think for B2B stuff, it mainly comes down to obviously emailing as being like the biggest market. And then I would say in a close second, I would put LinkedIn. You have like also other tools that do like WhatsApp and like other networks, but like honestly, I don't think that I don't personally think that they're like there yet. I would just focus on LinkedIn outreach and cold emailing tools. Now, for LinkedIn outreach, obviously, like, a tool. I mean, I'm going to talk about ourselves because we are a LinkedIn outreach tool that gives you all the bells and whistles that you need to do your outbound on LinkedIn. Now, I think like in like any tool that you need, I think it's very important that like you make sure that that tool integrates well with the other layer of tools, with the data tools, but also with multi-channel. So like if you want to with LinkedIn, if you want to use Aimfox with LinkedIn outreach, make sure you integrate it with, for example, Instantly as an emailing sequencer for email outreach. So like those are like probably like, if I would have to say like one tool in each space, I would say Aimfox for LinkedIn and Instantly for outreach. But then also you have other alternatives to Instantly. You're going to have Email Bison. You're going to have, which is very agency focused, and you're going to have Smart Lead and like a lot of other players as well. And same goes for LinkedIn. It's going to be Aimfox, but it's also going to be Expandy. It's going to be HeyReach. It's going to be Dripify. All of these guys. So, and then like on the data layer, I think like obviously Clay is the hype tool that everybody's talking about. And I know I met Zach. We just met in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago at the Sculpt conference in Clay, organized by Clay. But then also you need to keep your eye out on N8N, on Make, on these other tools that are also making a dent in the market. So yeah, that's how I would basically break it down into those 2 categories.
Awesome, Alec. Thank you for sharing. Also, we got to look into GPT with the agent they release. I feel like that's something that's going to bump heads for NAN, but that would be a different topic there. But one of the things that I want to mention to add to that, Alec, is that I've been a huge fan of Aimfox since it came out. I've been #1 promoter. I use it a lot for everything that I do. And it's 2 topics I want to bring here. The number one is I got the best use of the tool itself, taking the first step, which is focusing on your profile, right? Because I realized that your profile does 70% of the sell. And I feel like ever since I started factoring like outbound plays, whether it's email, LinkedIn, my profile was the biggest area where most of the people converted, right? Because I was starting to realize that on the calls, because every time I would do outreach to a specific amount of people, when they landed on my LinkedIn and I had a conversation with them, they're just so informed of what was going on. So that's one of the things that I always recommend. The other thing that I also recommend is always look into the tools that are natively integrated with other tools, because sometimes it might require having like somebody that's very technical to kind of map it on Zapier, Make, NAN. And sometimes when people are just in the early stage, they don't factor that in. So for example, the way that I use Aimfox, I use it with Slack. So I get all the notifications on my Slack, and it didn't require too much of the technical, right? But then the amount of meetings that generated, the amount of visibility it allowed my team to see all those campaigns that were coming in. So I just wanted to share those two takes to add to that, because I feel like that's something that a lot of GTM teams have to take into account, right?
Yeah, like super quickly, like 100%, you're 100% on point. Your LinkedIn profile is your landing page basically for LinkedIn. So make sure it looks properly. If it doesn't, get somebody to help you if you can't. And then, yeah, on the integration side, I mean, like a GTM engineer today needs to use a plethora of tools, and all of those tools, they need to talk to each other. They need to be able to work together to take it to the next level. So those integrations are playing a big role in adoption by GTM engineers.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I do want to ask Brian, what's your take on this?
Sure. So I'll try to say a few different tools than what previous person said, and we'll focus first on social listening. This is particularly relevant for me right now. However, I think it's relevant for all companies, because what I've found is that this is kind of a trend that I've learned through LinkedIn. So my scope of influence might be biased by where I spend my time. However, I think social listening is huge. Like getting a platform where where your tool is being tagged, what conversations it's being tagged in, the keywords that people are using in posts. That's kind of reactive social listening. And then there's proactive social listening, which is proactive social listening for posts that don't include your platform or your service or anything like that, but you want to listen for keywords and join the conversation. And so that's the first one that I feel like doesn't get a lot of kind of coverage that is super, super important, is social listening. The second thing, which kind of piggybacks off of this, which is like some content calendar or AI supported content generation platform. And what I mean by that is something like Scripe or Supergrow or any of these platforms that kind of help you generate content as a leader of your organization. And then finally, another tool that I recommend kind of in this realm, depending on what channels you're going to market in, is vidIQ. So if you're on YouTube, I've loved vidIQ for giving me ideas about different videos that I can make. And although it's specific to YouTube, I found a lot of inspiration for the videos that they have given me as ideas with their AI content generation thing to go post on LinkedIn. And so having these systems that know what posts are doing well on these platforms like LinkedIn and YouTube and X, you can get inspiration from those posts and then make your own content. Data enrichment, Clay, is very important. And then the other thing that I felt like needs to be mentioned is conversation recording or conversation intelligence, because your sales reps and your customer success folks, whether you're fully PLG or you're sales led, these conversations are so rich in information and opportunity, not just for upsells, but testimonials, little clips, little nuggets of you speaking about what your organization does well, which can be repurposed into content, which goes back into that content loop. So those are some of the platforms that I see not mentioned too much, but I think are crucial in GTM today.
It's awesome. So I want to add something to that, because you mentioned two things that are very important. One is the socials, but what I realized with a lot of GTM teams is that they're using socials for timing, not for context, right? Because This is a conversation I actually had with Zach. It's like, how do you achieve that level of show me you know me, right? Sometimes you don't want to mention things that, hey, I saw you like this post, I saw you went to this school, I went all this stuff. For me, it comes off as I get the effort of the research, but it could come off as, I don't really care about that, especially for like high executives, founders, CEOs. But what I see is that they use it for timing. So like if they're hiring, or there's like a growth rate with the filters that you can use in Sales Navigator. But the thing that I realized with the best GTM teams that have SDRs embedded, but obviously they have a layer of GTM engineers also taking care of the data, is that they're using the transcription, whether it's for objection handling, and they're turning that into content and articles, right? And next thing you know, you're on a call where, let's say I get on a call with somebody in Google Meet, I can share that article I just did that addresses that same pain point. And then now they see that I deal with this often, and they're actually part of that community that actually buy from us, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, because that has been something a lot of people has been approaching me. Is like, how do you get to that level of specificity on the content? Is take the transcription. You can get it from a YouTube video, you can get it from a previous call, right? Or even from the same roundup tables, right? There's a lot of context that can come off of this that I can potentially learn and share to the community. So I'm glad you bring that up, and thank you for sharing your take.
Of course, Dave.
Awesome. Zach, very excited to hear your take on this.
Man, I feel like it's funny. I was like scratching out notes while Alex and Brian were talking. And like my first one was like CI tools, conversation intelligence. So I know we want to move on to other topics. So I'll make this quick and maybe just kind of re-emphasize some of the points people already made. Conversation intelligence, it probably sounds to a lot of us like, yeah, duh. I still talk to teams that aren't doing this. And just another angle on this is just recording everything, having all that stuff, and with the power of AI and, MCP servers, and just like the ability of anyone on the team, once you have that corpus of all of those recorded conversations, I promise you will come up with questions months from now that you don't have today that you're going to be able to go back and answer. So that is just like, oh my God, everybody, if you're not doing that, make that priority number one. And then I would say, Clay, N8N, Cargo, Zapier, make yourself familiar with one of these orchestration platforms where you can start experimenting and iterating with these tools. Get Brian's help, actually try to map out how you plumb all this stuff together and as it changes over time. But the alpha you can unlock, just having the ability to test the plethora of stuff out there. We could spend the next hour like listing off amazing tools to go try. You kind of got to go try it. And the amazing thing is like now you can do these things in a way that's like truly efficient. And these aren't quarters long and month long projects. Like these are things you can stitch together in an afternoon and see if you feel like something's gonna be valuable for your team. And I'd say, again, these like orchestration layers that make this really easy to start stitching things to your CRM and to your call recorder and to your sequencing tool and whatnot. Make yourself familiar with that, make that a skill that you have. And I would say, those things are gonna get you pretty darn far.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I was using Octave, there was a lot of information or documentation that was from a while ago. And then when I factored that in, it kind of made some tweaks on the playbook that I was trying to build. So I'm glad you emphasized on that, because there were so many pain points you can extract from that, whether it's a podcast, a recording. And then, for example, let's say we're starting to see more demand. Like, for example, in our case, we're getting a lot of companies that are diamond resellers, which is an industry we never thought they needed SDRs, right? But they actually do. And then when we try to go get more diamond resellers, we use those pain points they mentioned on that previous call, and I just use that to make a relevant message, and that's working out very well. We're getting more people, whether it's diamond SaaS tools, right, for them to take on like inventory and all that stuff. That there's a high demand there, right? So awesome you bring that, and that's something that we are consistently improving, because like, for example, part of our team in the marketing side, our CMO is always documenting everything that's being published. We're keeping in track on what's converting the most, right? Because right now, 37% of our content is proof. Authority is people getting hired, people purchasing tools, agencies. And to get to that, we had to store a lot of data, right? Because then we know exactly what's the range that is required for you to keep a consistent demand on content, right? So awesome, guys. Anything before we go to the next question? Anything you guys want to share?
Nothing here.
Awesome. So the second question, let's go back to Alex, is how has the evolution of GTM changed as skills candidates need?
Yeah, I mean, I think like that question piggybacks nicely on the previous one, because obviously, we just mentioned like probably like 24 tools, in the last 7 minutes, and there are a lot more as well. So, this means that one of the skills this GTM needs to have is obviously the ability to adapt, test, to identify value, to identify what's the use case for a specific tool for the industry that they're working in. And I think just like an important skill is going to be able to test, to be able to iterate, and to be able to make quick decisions. As Zach said, you can get things going in an afternoon. You don't need 3 weeks of setting up to get something done. However, with that said, it is also very easy when you go down the rabbit hole to kind of get lost in the chaos a little bit. So I think organizational skills, iterational skills, and just the ability to always, and just the ability to always be connected and always know what's the latest tool that you should check out. Should you use every one of those? No, because you're gonna just get bloated with tools. But you should be able to kind of test and see.
Yeah.
And then that's like an overarching skill, but I think on a level, on a campaign level, on the outbound level, on the data level, you need to have good foundations in obviously understanding the tone, the messaging, ICP, so a lot of skills, the usual skills that, because if you go back, I think 7 years ago or 5 years ago, and looking at what an SDR was doing back then, now the GTM engineer, which is kind of maybe the evolution of the SDR, is it's a completely different skill set that you need in somebody like that. So yeah.
Awesome. I mean, one of the things that I'm starting to realize, especially now that I'm more involved in the GTM space, and I'm getting a lot of people coming from that are clay agencies, GTM engineers are looking to land opportunities. And I noticed that they all follow the same framework, which is I think it's called FITI, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, is find, enrich, transform, and then export. And I feel like as an SDR, there's certain fundamentals you have to follow, but as a GTM engineer, there's also fundamentals you have to follow, because one mistake or something that's done in the wrong order could cost a lot in terms of credits. You mentioned your company purchased so many different tools, right? So I'm glad you pieced that, because I felt like in the space there wasn't that order, right? And sometimes it will cost us so much money just to get some data in.
Yeah.
And everybody else is hurt, right?
And I think the whole GTM movement is fairly new, when you look at it, and it's been kind of coined by Clay, and kind of but there is a definite need for it. But when you look at when you just look at you just need to kind of keep things organized. And I think a lot of teams made a lot of errors in the early days, and then they kind of started building these frameworks, and these frameworks circulate on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So you should definitely, as a GTM engineer, you should definitely be on these networks and kind of follow all the trends, and you're going to hear some good tips there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Also, thank you for sharing that. Brian, what's your take on the skills that's required now?
I think one of the major ones is tying data to circumstance and being able to think in that way, where you're essentially trying to identify your ICP in a specific circumstance, that your solution is needed when that person is in that circumstance. But what does that mean from a data standpoint? What are the values of the attributes that make up that person, and what values do they have when they step into the window of where your solution is relevant? And if it's true that a lot of sales reps and sales oriented folks are going to be turning into GTM engineers, that's going to be a bit of a bridge that they're going to have to to walk over, to start to think in data as opposed to just think in circumstance. Because I think sales reps are excellent at thinking in circumstance. When they're on calls with people, they understand the circumstance that they're in. But in terms of, prospecting now at scale, it's really that whole data layer is giving you the answer of finding people who are in that circumstance at scale. And so sales reps thinking in data so that you can tie data to circumstance. The second thing is a GTM engineer is building around RevOps, right? It's not replacing RevOps. It's building around RevOps. And so I think it's very important that GTM make sure that all of the teams that he or she is working around can see exactly what the GTM engineer is doing around the RevOps. And so I'm just going to buck that as seeing the big picture, right? And that's my plug ultimately for Puzzle, because ultimately you have RevOps who's building the whole, cycle of marketing and sales and customer success. And then GTM is essentially looking at parts of that and trying to scale it out and experiment things to where maybe they even hand it over to RevOps to implement in a broader capacity. So I just think that with RevOps keeping its territory and GTM building around it, it's really important that GTM experts are constantly helping RevOps and vice versa see the big picture about how systems are working together. And then the last thing that I'll mention is just, it's a pretty soft skill here, but it's thinking in workflows. And I only say this because I've received this feedback from a couple of folks who have hired me on the consulting side to help kind of stand up their RevOps processes. And one of the things that oftentimes they're like having trouble with, and they vocalized, is not understanding how to think in workflows. And that's kind of a softer skill that I'm trying to wrap my head around, how you can help people kind of think in workflows, if then this, if then this sort of deal. But that's a skill that I think will go far for GTM folks.
Awesome. Well, the main takeaway from this is I'll give you a real life situation that I had with Puzzle. So I don't know if this coincidence, but ever since I spoke to you last time, a lot of people highlight the same business challenges, right? And the main audience has definitely been GTM engineers. Like they tell me like, hey man, sometimes it's very tough to deal with enterprise clients. And I'm telling them and I'm showing in a clay table of how everything is pieced together, but they just don't understand. Like I feel like they're falling asleep on the call. And then when I show them Puzzle, they literally told me, I never had a client actually close this deal so fast. Like they understand exactly what's happening in every piece, who's involved, what is the task, who is it associated to, who's responsible, is it live, is it pending? So that level of clarity actually is helping GTM guys actually keep clients for longer, they can easily scale because if they get another GTM engineer in their team, they know exactly how they're operating and who's responsible for what. But one of the things that you highlight which is very important, is the communication. Sometimes I feel like this GTM guys have the ones that are winning now, they have a very strong communication with the SDR team, with the RevOps team. And I feel like that's where, because one of the things that I hate is when changes happen and nobody knows, right? And then you have to go find out who did the changes, and then that takes so much time and effort. But then knowing that if that person is accountable for that puzzle and they're actually making those changes real time, and they can leave a note, add attachments, add links, it just makes it so easy for everybody to be super aligned. So what you're saying is definitely something I'm also experiencing, and I use Puzzle as well. So for me, it has given me so much clarity, and not only clarity, I feel like it's given my team voice, and they can easily come in and actually say, that doesn't make sense, that does, right? Sometimes it's very difficult to do that with static documents.
Totally.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you for that. Zach, what's your take on the evolution of GTM?
I feel like Brian, I feel like we drank from the same pot of coffee this morning. I was like typing up my notes, and like one of my first ones was systems thinking, which I think is like very similar to your point about like thinking in workflows. And like that to me is probably like the number one thing right now is like you want people, I guess, backing up with the ability of kind of what we were talking about previously of like, now we can automate so much more. We can turn things into processes that literally, months and just a couple of years ago were like impossible to turn into actual like codified processes that we can build automation around. So having those people on your team that can be systems thinkers that are looking at every act they're doing, every job to be done, every piece of a successful campaign or sales process or whatever it is. And like, what are those components we could build into something that then I don't have to do the next time? Holy crap, like hire them in a second, right? Like those are the people that are going to help you like compound your advantage. Second, again, maybe just to speak slightly differently to some of these more soft skills, like, you know, and like when we're hiring, I'm looking for people that are, you know, it's a bias for action, right? Like things are happening so much faster. Markets are changing so fast. You're going to have another competitor tomorrow that you didn't have today. So just people with speed and that mental flexibility that, you know, you're going to give them a playbook and it's going to break in T-2 weeks. Like you need people that have that bias for action, for speed, have that, you know, the durability to, hey, the playbook's going to fall apart, keep moving, have the mental flexibility. What did we learn that's still true? What is happening that breaks? You know, those type of people. And then the last thing I'd kind of point to, again, another like broad thing just to maybe kind of look for in folks is information is so accessible now. It is so easy to go to GPT and Claude and Gemini and get incredible knowledge that previously you could not do without engaging with vendors and tool providers and all of this. So there needs to be a reason to engage with you beyond just your tool. I really believe you need to build trust with your market. And I think you need to have people that, I believe right now, a big part of like building trust is, you know, somewhat we were talking about earlier is like building in public to agree. Like the proof of work is showing people that you know what's going on in the market. You're building things, you're sharing templates, you're doing things like that. Like you need to build credibility in your market in a way that I don't think in the past. Like I think you could be a killer sales rep that hid behind a phone and an email account and you didn't do anything on LinkedIn, and that can still work today to a degree, but I'd say probably for like, especially amongst companies like ours, like, I don't think that is true. You know, I think you do need people that are out there in public, and there needs to be a compelling reason to engage with you beyond just the tool that you're learning, and that people believe by engaging with you, they can learn faster. Right.
100%. Well, my take on this, Zach, is we started running some pilot campaigns for GTM engineers, and the first thing that we figured out is these guys are so active. They use the tools.
Mm-hmm.
They are always getting informed. The speed to execution is incredible, right? One of the things that they tend to do a lot, that gives a lot of our buyers confidence, that they build in public, right? Sometimes you might see a use case or a workflow that I need for my business, and then I see a person that just built it in 5-10 minutes. I want to have a conversation with that guy, right? But also the response rate, talking to these guys is just so valuable because they're also using those tools that they claim they give results with. So I feel like this is such a high potential. And I feel like that's why a lot of the GTM engineer guys are getting so much of the piece of the pie, because they get it super involved. And I don't know. I guess in my experience, like you rarely see SDRs and account executives as involved as a GTM engineer, and the amount of results they're doing with least amount of tools is pretty sick, right? That's something that I'm definitely seeing through the marketplace, right? It's like it's definitely not to remove credit from SDRs and account executives. They do very well, but they do well when there's a right setup. And sometimes the GTM engineers are the ones that allow that to happen, right? So awesome, guys. Anything before we go to the third question? Anything you guys wish to add?
Bring it on.
All right. So the third question kind of adds up a little bit to what you said, which is like, what are the signals what are the first signals you see when a person is GTM ready? But I want to formulate the actual question, which is when buyers are evaluating candidates, what signal proves someone is truly GTM ready with the right software experience?
Alec. Yeah. So like, you know, I mean, I think we kind of already like touched a little bit on this question with what we just discussed. Like, you know, like an important signal obviously is going to be like, you know, the social proof. When you look at these LinkedIn profiles, when you look at the references, you need to see that these GTM engineers are active, you know, that they are just like jumping all over every lead, you know. So like I think like that is definitely one big thing. Like also like I'm maybe going to like also look at this question from the other direction, in a sense, is like what is maybe not important. So just to kind of like make it a little bit more interesting, what I've seen end users looking for GTMs, and they're like, yeah, but like, do you have experience running GTM, campaigns in this specific industry? And then like, I don't think that like, this space is the space of GTM engineers is so mature that you can have it really kind of broken down into specific industries. And on top of that, I really think that like, a lot of like the vast majority of the tools and the skills apply across different industries. So like one of the things that I would not require my GTM to be is if I'm doing like, for example, some like niche industry or something that's like very big, but like just like, I wouldn't limit myself to just looking for a GTM engineer who has experience in that specific industry. Now, an important signal obviously is going to go around the tools that he is using and the and how good those tools are for what you need to achieve. Depending again on your use case, on your industry, there are going to be different things that you need that like that are going to be for your specific use case, and you're going to need a different tool set to achieve the end results.
Yeah.
So I would say kind of like those would be my two takes on this.
I have a question. So, for example, let's say you were to hire a GTM engineer. So, what you're saying is that the main things you will look into is, the timing, how much they get involved, how they navigate through tools, and basically what are the best use cases they're best at, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like that's it. Obviously, like you always want to have like prior experience. Like what I would look if I like when I am looking, and we are currently looking for a GTM. Like I want somebody who can show me that they can run things at scale. They can keep the context relevant and not make the outreach irrelevant. And the most important signal for me is going to be the ability to integrate all of these tools together to do efficient multi-channel outreach. I think that's a big one. Like, you should do cold emailing and you should do LinkedIn. And if you pair those two together, those two forms of outreach, you just get a lot more results for every lead that you enroll in that campaign. So I would say like somebody who's competent in making tools work together over somebody. So that will be a more important criteria than somebody that has just done campaigns in my industry.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you just revealed the job post opportunity. So if somebody reach out to you after they see this, expected. But I just wanted to bring something up that Zach mentioned, right? There's still a lot of companies that are not doing transcriptions, but there's also a lot of people that are not using LinkedIn. Like sometimes I talk about LinkedIn and people think I'm going crazy, right? They feel like it all happened out of luck, but it was a lot of effort. But for me, LinkedIn has definitely been the place where 90% of my opportunities come in, right? So definitely something we always have to factor in.
One last thing, like LinkedIn gives you a lot of context, like talking about context, like you get a lot of data for these individual leads, and then if you use that data in a smart way, you can really approach things systematically and very make it like what was it you said, Dave? Make it sound like not like they know you, but
Show me.
that you deal with the same people from the same space. Like
exactly, yeah.
That's something that I learned from Samantha McKenna from Show Me You Know Me. And that's something that has changed the way I approach people, because I reach out to people how I would like to be approached, and I feel like that changes everything. But that's something I definitely I got more context of that using Octave, because there's so many pieces you need to add to actually get the context of everything. And sometimes we think it's just a description or the products. There's so much more to it, right? Especially when you piece the voice of the customer to it as well. Because sometimes we sound so technical, it sounds so good, we're so happy, we're getting so much dopamine for that. But when you talk to a lot of people, I just don't get it, So sometimes there has to be a fair balance on the messaging. But I feel like for that, it requires a lot of context and a lot of information as well. So 100%. Awesome, Brian.
So when I'm evaluating candidates, the signal, and it's a bit of a contrarian view here. I would look for folks who are admitting with things that they tried that didn't work and reporting on what they learned from what they didn't work. Because, and I imagine this is true for everyone on this call, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening in, you get reached out by probably a dozen outbound GTM experts every week, with similar offers or asking for 25 minutes. And I don't know how to differentiate these folks other than the fact that everyone is saying that they're booking, triple digit meetings for their client with minimum budget. And I'm a bit in the camp of not believing what they're saying because I've actually worked with, a few GTM agencies and I wasn't able to get those results. And so I would love to see someone who admits that, they launched these campaigns. This is what they learned from it alongside of all of their successes. That way that I know, and Alex, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is they're experimental and they are action oriented, right? So like they're taking actions, they're trying things, they might fail and they're admitting to those things. They gather learnings and then they also share their winnings. So it's a bit of a contrarian view, but I actually like to listen to when things didn't go right and then what people did when that happened.
It's actually very interesting because when I went to my first Clay event in Bogota, where I actually was introduced to Octave by, what it's like, a ticket agency. Yeah. So when I actually went to that event with an opportunity, right? And I was hoping I would find a GTM engineer. And the first thing that caught my attention was exactly that, Brian. He's like, look, I tried this, I tried that. I realized I don't perform well in this, even though I'm learning, but this is what I'm good at. And then it matched the requirements of the job post. And the person was hired the day after. So by the time I got back to my city, there was already offer being sent to him. And that was the first thing that caught my attention because I fall into that. There's so many people I had to unfollow. And I just got so tired of like getting all this NAN workflows that replaced 300 people, and it didn't make sense for me. But then when I actually met him, his name is actually Samuel, very good guy. I actually did some introductions, but that was the main thing that actually got him hired. He was constantly doing experiments, documenting, showing in public, and I feel like that definitely gets you right in the door, 100%. Yep. Awesome, Zach.
All right, try and close this off here. So I guess on the theme, it sounds like we've been talking a lot about like GTME hires, and I think there's something like we can kind of learn from like what actual like engineering interviewing has looked like for a long time, and like the take home project has always been a big part of that. And I think that's something that can now be applied to go to market hires in a way that maybe not as much in the past. I guess, I've done it as a sales rep in the past where it's like, hey, here's our version of the pitch deck. Like come in and, show us, put your spin on it. Let's hear you present. You can change the slides if you want, but now you can do the take home in a way that's like, build me a system. Like here's a campaign. Tell me what you'd put together, go and puzzle, show me what you'd build. And I think the great part about those interviews, and that now, I've learned a lot, being with my co-founder through, getting much deeper in like an engineering interview process that we've started to apply to on the GTME side, is then you can apply these same principles and types of questions where you look for signal. You go, hey, this is great. Now, what if I gave you twice as long to build this? What would you change? What would you do differently? All right, let's say I need to scale this campaign to 10 times the number of people. What would you do differently? And like, those are the type of questions where, again, you're trying to get to the creativity, the thought process, what's underneath the activity. And like, I think that is where, again, there's a qualitative aspect of it. There's not necessarily look for them to say this, but you can pull out, I think, pretty easily and readily a good sense for like, does this person have that muscle? Are they clever? Are they savvy with just the tool, or are they savvy to kind of the motion and the overall premise of like what the hell we're trying to do here as well? So yeah, I think just this idea of like applying kind of the classic engineering interview kind of tactics to the go-to-market side is something that you can really do now, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. No, and one of the things to add to that is that I'm starting to see the GTM role as a lot of engineers, like they actually choose that career.
Yeah.
So they didn't just randomly end up there, right? They actually like the use case, they like the tools they're using, they know they can map things out, they know they could generate opportunities, but it's actually something they want to continue pursuing. Sorry. So that those are behaviors that I think is making them very competitive, right? Because it just feels like you hired a whole team sometimes. You know, like this guy knows so much things, and if you put him in the right team, it's just you can just compound the value to that, right? So I definitely see that, and this is a space where I'm committed to learning a lot because everybody's dropping something unique, and it gets to a point where it's like this different content every day, you know. But awesome, guys. So I do appreciate you guys with the responses. I'm very well aware you guys are very busy individuals. I do appreciate your take, and I am going to leave all that information to make sure that our buyers and sellers see you. Use your tool. I know, Zach, you do have a free trial on your tool. Puzzle is also free at the moment. It's a free user. And then Aimfox is also with a trial. So you guys have the chance to try the tools. If you don't try it, you're most likely going to get overwhelmed by me using them. So we're going to get them somewhere.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Anything you guys want to share with the audience before we go?
Get busy, build something. Stop right to do it. Just get your hands dirty. That'll help you more than anything else.
And start talking about it, like, you know, the build in public thing. I think it helps a lot if you're a candidate. Build, post about it, and, you know, get some eyeballs on the stuff you're doing. It's going to help you.
All right, and guys, please make sure to overwhelm Alec with the opening, the GTM opening.
Yeah.
So let's get it, guys. Let's change some lives, and thank you guys for building things that are actually helping a lot of people, including myself. Very fortunate to be using you guys' solution, and I don't think I'm going to stop. So let's get it.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
See y'all.